that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to Elric of Melniboné with the next story by Michael Moorcock. Well, in the collection, the Book 2 collection. However, chronologically, this is near the end of the lifespan of Michael Moorcock's work. Well, at least in terms of most of Elric. I think he wrote something a few years back, but mostly near the end, because this is 1991, so this would have been a few years after the Pearl story we talked about before, with The Revenge of the Rose. Non-spoiler wise, not that I have too many. Again, a lot of these stories, first off, this story is a bit longer than a typical Elric story tends to be, so that was a nice change of pace. There's some positives, and there's some huge positives and negatives to this story. Lots of the same ways the Fortress of the Pearl, because it is written later. Moorcock, you can really see it. His writing is so refined by this point. His prose are so much better. Not that his prose was ever bad. He always has had solid prose, but it is so much better here. And also the humor within the story as well, because Moorcock, he always kind of has humor in his stories, but here it was just a lot more like hopeful. I don't know, it was a lot lighter in tone than most of these Elric stories tend to be. So, you know, what do I say, non-spoiler? Elric gets sent on a mission because he gets convinced that his dad's soul is being, I'm just kind of confused. His dad's soul's being messed with. If he doesn't fix it, things are going to go badly. We also meet some gypsies. Kind of cool. We have this poet guy, not his friend from the previous story, a new character, and we actually in the story also get a very good foil to Elric here, in terms of, what is the villain's name? Ganor, who is very similar to Elric in a lot of ways. He even also has a soul-sucking sword that kind of makes Stormbringer kind of useless in this story, or like at least less useful, which was an interesting parallel. And also, as compared to a lot of the doom and gloom, you can't escape destiny that comes in most of these Elric stories, there is a lot more of a glimmer of hope in this story, which was rather surprising. And yeah, it was cool to see Elric kind of come up against his own match in a sense, in terms of having somebody with a similar power, you know, similar sort of sword situation. And sort of, this is what Elric can become if he loses all hope, if he goes to the worst aspects of himself. And this is probably him at his most hopeful, even though I don't think the next two stories he will be as hopeful. But I guess that's how depression and stuff works, right? It comes and goes in waves. Perpetually, though, you're always kind of a little bit sad, and there's no real escaping it. But the biggest gripe, I don't know if it is simply that Michael Moorcock doesn't know how to do it, or if maybe we'll see in future stories he does do it well. But I feel, despite the fact that these later books are written so well, the prose are so good, so much better than the ones that he's famous for, when he writes longer stories, they tend to meander. they tend to linger. And you start checking your watch, like, how long have I been reading this? Because it just goes on too long. I know that's subjective. Pacing, it's hard to kind of equal out like what's too much. But at some point, you're going through the story and you're like, when is this going to end? Which is really sad when um, these stories, even this one, isn't that long. You could do this in an afternoon. So it's a bit of and now that's again subjective. You may read it and think it's perfectly fine. Um, for me, it just ran on a little bit longer, made me start to not care midway through, and then pick back up near the end. Um, that's pretty much my non-spoiler thoughts. Do I recommend it? I mean, I mean, if you just get the collections that they have now of the three collections of Elric, you'll have it in your collection. So I do think it's a worthy cost of the edition to check it out, especially if it's already in the collection that you purchase. Um, but I did enjoy it. I did appreciate the better prose. I did appreciate the parallels to Elric with the villain, and of course more multiverse shenanigans Michael Moorcock was doing into the Spider-Verse years and years before it was done. So that's pretty much it for my non-spoiler. If you don't care about spoilers, I don't really have that many, then stick around. Otherwise, you can bail. Also, I'm sorry. I'm reading them back to back. I can't help it. I can't help it. I have to do it. I have to say it. I have to say it. I have to say it. What do you want me to do, guys? What do you want me to do? Listen. I'm don't crucify me. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. The Witcher is often called White Wolf. And I'm here to provide you the next White Wolf counter on this video, because here in Elric, again, he's called a White Wolf for explicitly the same reasons. White hair and whatnot, being albino. Anyway, the poet, philosopher, not philosopher, but this guy that Elric hangs out with is called Ernest Weldrake. I was a bit confused. I was really confused because they mention Earth. I don't know if it's just a place similar to Earth, or if Weldrake himself is meant to be from like Victorian London era Earth. I don't know, because again, this is the multiverse, right? I'm not sure if that's what that's supposed to mean, but it really seems like Weldrake is from like Victorian London. So that was something. Elric's father speaks to him, or his spirit, or what he assumes to be his spirit, which sets him off all the way through the adventure. We also meet gypsies. I really don't have too much to say about the gypsies. There's some interesting things there, but I mean, if you think of a gypsy, it's kind of following the tropes that you'd, you know, like Hunchback of Notre Dame, stuff like that. That's what they are. And again, the more hopeful ending here is because the villain Gainor, I don't know how you pronounce his name. He talks about how like him and Elric are basically the same, and he keeps trying to appeal to Elric's depression to remind him how evil and corrupt and, you know, terrible Elric is. And Elric, you know, claps back with, no matter, I have done things bad in my life, but I've killed more villains than innocents throughout my tenure with Stormbringer, and you have killed far more innocents than villains. It's kind of like his big retort for the story, and of course they save the day. Things are clear, and we'll never hear about this story again, of course, because it was written way later. But out of the States, Is it an improvement in a lot of ways? I think so. Is it a detriment in other ways? I also think is the thing about most of the, while I may not have much to say because I don't feel like there's a lot of substance really to kind of gnaw at in these Elric novels. When you have more of the classic ones, the prose may be a little bit more simplistic, but the books also beat through at a breakneck pace. They feel really fast to get through. Those classic Elric novels. And here, while the prose are so much better, um, for a story like this, it's not that it necessarily couldn't have taken its time. It's just when you take your time, typically you don't want me to notice. You know what I mean? Unless that's deliberately part of the point, which I don't know if it was. But still, by and large, I had fun with it, and I would recommend it. So, up next, we have a semi-canon to the games. Is it canon to the novels? I guess that's really for you to decide. But we have the Witcher comic, House of Glass. See you then.